Nearly surrounded by the Atlantic, Nova Scotia is a province that boasts the most diverse range of landscapes. From the untamed coastal lowlands of the western shore to the mountainous highlands in the east, the endless sandy beaches of the south shoreline to the rocky cliffline along the bay to the north. With its highest tides and its darkest skies, it's a land that has over 13,000 kilometers of coastline, meaning you're never more than an hour away from the ocean. First settled over 4 centuries ago, but home to the Mi'kmaq long before that, it's a land that is so rich in history. It's a bountiful land, rich dykelands and rolling farmlands, orchards and vineyards, but it's also a harsh and rustic land that doesn't tame easily. This summer, join us each week as we share the places we love most to explore, some familiar and some not so well known, but all within a day's drive, and all worth coming to see. Welcome to our summer road trip series. This week, we're harbor hopping all along the shores of the Bay of Fundy, the body of water that lies on the northern shore of Nova Scotia, with the province of New Brunswick directly across. Part of the Gulf of Maine and therefore the Atlantic Ocean, the Bay of Fundy is famous for having the highest tidal range in the world. The tides rise and fall roughly 16 meters or 52 feet twice each day, and they bring in over 100 billion tons of water every single day coming in and out. Because of the funnel shape of the bay, the tides are extremely powerful, making swimming off most of these shores quite dangerous. But the rocky coastline is so beautiful and offers so many things to explore. We'll begin at the tip of the shoreline, before the Minas Basin in Scott's Bay. In true coastal fashion, the weather along the bay is always its own. It can be sunny and 30 degrees in the valley, but not 10 minutes away, just over the North Mountain, barely 20 degrees and completely engulfed in a blanket of fog. Scott's Bay is a sleepy little village with a long, rocky beach. There's a famous hiking trail, Cape Split, that's one of the top hikes we'd love to do when our littler ones are just a little bit older. Even in the fog and the drizzle, Scott's Bay is still beautiful. From there, we head back down the mountain, as there's no direct road all along the shoreline, and make our way to the next harbor village to the east, Baxter's Harbour. Baxter's Harbour is such an interesting little cove, hidden out of view behind beach roses and wild lupins. When the tide is in, it's fairly unassuming, with just a small waterfall in the distance. But when the tide flows out, an underwater world is revealed, and you can walk on the ocean floor under and around the giant rock formations. The dark rocks, covered in seaweed and barnacles, create little pools for periwinkles and tiny hermit crabs. It's a great place to explore, climbing over the rocks and around the driftwood on the beach. Just a few minutes from there is one of the most famous harbors on the bay, Halls Harbour. Still a working harbor, Halls Harbour is a must-see. The lobster boats moored in the harbor rise and fall with the tides, sometimes floating at wharf level, and others resting on the sand, completely run aground. The Lobster Pound is the place to stop for a classic lobster dinner where you can choose your lobster from below. But personally, I'm always partial to the lobster roll. Winding back down the mountain and then back up again, we make our way to the smaller working harbor of Harbourville. Still an active harbor with lobster boats moored, Harbourville is home to one of our favorite little fish markets, the Harbourville Fish Market. At this point, we're about halfway down the valley and coming up to the little town of Morden, home to the historic French cross and where we previously called home. Morden is especially quiet, as it's not directly connected along the shore road, so unless one drives out with the intention to see the landmark, it's quite sleepy. The monument, which sits overlooking the shore, with Isle Haut visible across the water, is in remembrance of a band of Acadians who fled during the Expulsion beginning in 1755 and found refuge on the shores here. The plan was to flee to the shores of New Brunswick by canoe across the bay, but most died of disease and starvation even before making the treacherous journey. Having lived on this very shore, what they must have endured during that winter would have been unimaginably difficult. The bay can be harsh and unrelenting, and even if they survived the enemy and the elements, crossing such harsh tidal waters by canoe would have been extremely dangerous. Margaretsville is the next harbor, a popular cottage destination along the bay. Here, there's a little wharf you can walk along with a little black and white striped lighthouse. The scent of the beach roses fills the air as you walk among the cottages on the water. The drive from Margaretsville to Port George is a pretty drive, especially as you get closer to sunset. Down this end of the valley, there's more farmland overlooking the water, so it's a very scenic drive. Port George is a tiny little cluster of cottages right on the shore road, and one little lighthouse in the middle. The entire town is lined with beach roses. There are so many quaint little cottages here. There is also a little picnic area along the shore, a popular place to enjoy lunch with a view, or wander around the rocks at low tide and enjoy the resident seals that always seem to be bobbing around in the water. At this point, a good deal of the day has been spent driving around enjoying the views. Sunsets on the bay are some of the most glorious in Nova Scotia, so make the most of it and find a place to park and take it all in. One of our favorite little harbors is Port Lorne. It's quiet and less well known. It's a smaller little community, so the beach is usually quiet and mostly private. First stop at Pearls in Paradise for an ice cream. We've discovered that if you order soft serve in a cup, a Stanley keeps it quite cold until you get back to the shore. And better yet, make your own nor'easter, our version of a blizzard, with some crushed chocolate bars and cookies. Those and a fire, if the burn ban allows, of course, while the sun sets, turning everything pink, are the perfect summer date in our opinion. Just don't forget a blanket or sweater, as it gets quite cool in the evenings. The Bay of Fundy is a beautiful part of Nova Scotia. There are so many coves and harbors to explore, and this being only the upper half. Next week, we'll continue our way around the province, down along the Acadian shore, along the rest of the bay, all the way to Yarmouth on the eastern coast.